All right, guys, no BS, AI for e-commerce. Probably you know this, probably you've done it. I get all these texts from my e-commerce founder friends. How do you use AI? I think the place that we're all at as a group of founders is that we understand AI is powerful, and we understand that our competitors are going to use it. If they get advantage, that means that they have more to spend on customers. That affects our business. The problem is there's a lot of BS in the space. There's so much bad AI. There's so many people trying to sell us crap. There's so many people that 6 months ago were crypto experts that are now AI experts. And it's just hard to sort through all the BS. My thesis on all this is we're sort of in that period. If you're a 90s kid like me, there's this period where if you thought to use Google reflexively, you were smarter than everybody else, right? It was like a superpower. And it wasn't that everybody else didn't know about Google, it's just that they didn't have the instinct for it. My thesis is that's what we all need, is we all need an instinct to reach for AI immediately when we have an issue. And that's what I want to help you guys develop. It doesn't have to be hard, doesn't have to be intimidating, doesn't have to be confusing, and it can be very, very high impact for your business. And so that you can know where to use it in your business, how to make money, and how to cut through all the crap. Short episodes that teach you a specific skill and start developing an intuition and instinct to reach for AI in your e-commerce business. And anything you guys shoot me in the comments, I will try to cover, and I hope it helps.
All right, guys. So one of the questions I get most often is just, where do I get started? And what are all these different companies and different models, and which one should I use for what? And admittedly, it is confusing. So if I was to leave you with one thing, one way to integrate AI into your day-to-day habits, it would be go add the ChatGPT for Google search to your web browser, the Chrome extension. And then when you do a search, it will run it through ChatGPT. And then by default, if you search like me 10 times a day, you'll start using AI. So if that's all you do, that's a good start, because it'll get you in the habit of using AI reflexively. And that's what we're trying to get to, is that sort of like reflex to reach for AI in the same way that most of us have developed a reflex to reach for Google. And so look, there's all these different AIs. We've got ChatGPT, we've got Gemini, we've got Claude. It's like, and then to make it more confusing, within each provider, we've got all sorts of options. I'll zoom in so you guys can read. All sorts of different options, right? And, it gets even more confusing from there because there's deep research. There's a lot of different ways to use each of these AI providers. And so I guess I'm going to leave you sort of with two different things: how to think about which provider to use for which problem, and then specifically, I think, for ChatGPT, which model to be using. Right? And so the best way to answer what provider to be using, we got ChatGPT, Google Gemini, Claude. There's a ton of other ones as well, right? But these are the sort of top three. The way that I tend to use it is actually evident when you look at my history over here. So what do you see with Claude? Well, we've got website design. What is this? This one is a logo. I was working on one of our products, and I was changing the colors out, and I was having Claude take the old website, took a screenshot, and I gave it a new set of colors, and it gave me a mock-up of the new design. So that tells you what I use Claude for, and it's mostly coding or design. It's really good at taking an idea and giving me a visual look at what that's going to look like. So like you see slides from my investor decks, right? This sort of stuff I use Claude for. Whereas if you go look at ChatGPT, you'll see beefy stuff. Hey, I'm having this specific set of problems. Even like I'm having a battery issue with my iPhone. This is a true story, by the way. My iPhone started getting really, really hot after the latest upgrade. All sorts of different stuff. And that's because ChatGPT is my daily driver. And I use it for stuff from how do I boil an egg to like what are the different Shopify OAuth integration options, right? And now Gemini, you actually look at the timestamp. This is May 16th, right? I don't use it that often. And when I do use it, if you look, you'll notice each of my responses have this frame around them. What you're seeing right there is deep research, right? And I basically only use Gemini for deep research, which we'll talk about in a later episode. But what that means is that you can kind of ignore it for now. The models move so fast that we'll keep you guys updated as they get better. But for day to day, I don't find it to be any better. Or I find it to be worse than the right model choice on Claude and ChatGPT. So on ChatGPT, one of the things I hear most often is I tried it, right? And the model choices here are not. They make it seem like, oh yeah, this one's like a little better than the other one, or maybe this one's slightly smarter. It's not that way, right? 4.0 is the way it thinks one time, one thought, and that's it. All the models that begin with O, O3, O3 Pro, O4, O4 Mini High, these models think over and over again. So the O stands for over and over again, right? That's the way you can remember that. The difference in just pure IQ between 4.0 and O3s is like 4.0 is like 90 IQ, O3 is like 130. So you think about the difference there, that's a lot. And so if you tried AI, meaning you clicked new chat and you went with the default model, which is 4.0, you were talking to somebody that was a lot less smart than you. However, if you're using O3, they're probably smarter than you, smarter than me. And so there's a big difference. And so when I say use ChatGPT, I mean very specifically, I used O3 or O3 Pro, which as of today, Friday, June 27th, are the smartest models on the market. It'll probably only be that way for a few more months. And you can tell the difference between when you're on a reasoning model, which thinks over and over again, but how long it takes to respond. So we can do this now. I can say, okay, how should I optimize? This is not a good question, guys. My Klaviyo for deliverability. What are best practices in e-commerce, right? Well, that's that one of 4.0. And then what I'm going to do, pull the same thing up. 4.0 is already done. Look, boom, it's already done. Same thing, we're going to drop it in 0.3, right? First thing you'll notice, long pause, thinking. And this is its thought process. This is the over and over again piece. And it'll search the web, and it'll revise its opinion. You can even sort of expand it and read it as it's thinking. And you'll get a much more informed answer. Now, the thing about these 4.0 models and 3.5 Turbo and some of these other ones that did not start with the non-reasoning models, is they sound right. Sometimes they are, right? But often they're not. And so if you didn't sit here and wait for it to think, you're really not using AI, in my opinion. You're using something else that's not very good. So look at this. This is a much more informed response, And we can go much deeper on this with deep research, which I'll explain to you guys in another episode. So there you go. If I leave you with one thing today, it's use ChatGPT for search. Second thing, use models that start with an O. They think over and over again. And that's it.
I'm Amir. I have done $1 billion plus in e-commerce GMV over the last 10 years. I also sold an AI company when I was 27, sold to Zynga. And I've been doing AI for a lot longer than it worked. It really only started working great in the last few years. But I've been really into AI since I was a kid, actually. And the difference, I think, about my perspective on AI is, one, I'm an e-commerce founder. Two, I only care about business results. I don't care about the nerdy stuff, and I don't get off on it being neat. It is neat. But what I care about is the results I can make in my business. I think that makes my perspective a little different, and that's what I'm hoping to give to y'all.